Welcome to the Clarity Advisor Show, where you'll learn how to grow your team today. Join Ken Trupke and his guests as they discuss what works and doesn't work to grow your team in today's world. And now, your host, Ken Trupke.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Clarity Advisors podcast. Hey, have you struggled to keep up with the changing technologies and the digital tools that your team needs to be successful? Well, my guest today co-founded a company that helps companies digitally transform and keep up with all the things that are changing today. So let's welcome in my friend, Daryl Dixon. Welcome, Daryl.
Thank you, Ken. It's good to be with you today.
Yeah, great. So tell us a little bit more about VALiNTRY, the company that you lead and founded, and what you do and who your customers are and how you help them.
Sure. Well, VALiNTRY 360 started in 2013, and we are a Salesforce partner. And what that means is companies that want to digitally transform to support their sales as well as their marketing functions all go to some sort of a CRM. We happen to support one of the largest in the world, which is Salesforce. But Salesforce has become much, much more than just a CRM. And so companies obviously need a wide range of digital solutions. And so, basically we configure these digital solutions to match the way businesses do their business. So nothing out of the box works anymore. You can't just go buy a box of software and have it support your business, because as you know, every business out there operates a different way. And so, we started actually in the technology talent business. We're experts at finding and attracting talent, which led us to actually using Salesforce ourselves. We became so excited about it that we actually became a Salesforce partner. And now we are spreading the word and helping companies of all sizes throughout the country. It's an all remote business. Actually use technology to keep up with better connections with their clients, from marketing all the way through sales and ongoing communication.
Okay, excellent. Now you use the phrase CRM. For those of you who might not be familiar with that, what is a CRM and what does it stand for, and what is it that it is that, and why do companies need that?
It's a client relation management tool. There's a variety of software solutions out there that do that. And so what it is designed to do is to help companies maintain an ongoing relationship with future and potential clients, as well as with existing clients. And so we're looking to build this connection through this omni-channel connection that we can connect with the prospects, as well as our end clients, and then maintain that business for future transactions.
Okay, and so Salesforce is one of those CRMs. Salesforce is a CRM.
That's how Salesforce started.
Okay.
And so, not to confuse you, but Salesforce has actually become a platform of success, they call it.
Okay.
Just like your phone, when we initially had flip phones, Salesforce was sort of just a CRM. And what's happened over time is all of our phones have become smartphones, and we now use them for flashlights. We use them for everything every day. So we have all different kinds of functions on our cell phone. And basically that's what's happened to Salesforce as well. So there's specialty products that they've added, many specialty products that very large companies can use and small companies use. And it's grown to a massive organization, and it can be used to do so many different things. That's why it is really taken off. And it also is done on a software as a service basis, which means that you need really nothing but an internet connection to be able to use it anywhere in the world. And obviously that reduces the cost for company IT departments. It also is done on a no-code basis, which means that it's all done through configuration, which means that the customization and modifications can be done much less expensively and much easier than the traditional custom software development that required an entire development team.
Okay. So if I'm hearing you right, then you guys started a IT business and started using Salesforce as its initial function of a client relationship management system. As it grew and became more functional, you guys figured out how to do certain things with it and actually evolved into a business that helps other companies use Salesforce, which has again evolved and grown into a multi-function tool, help them configure Salesforce for the best fit for their business. Am I getting close?
Yep, you got it. And so
Okay.
the only thing is Salesforce has lots of partners, thousands of partners across the country.
Sure.
And there's a very formal program in terms of becoming an approved Salesforce partner. So we went through all of those steps. So it wasn't just something we, decided to do because we liked it and, did it at night in our spare time or something like that.
Okay.
So we went through those formal steps and have attracted very specialized technical people that have certifications. All the technical people can get a wide range of certifications. There's a tremendous training program that Salesforce supports in getting those certifications. But we really pride ourselves on providing not only the technical solution, but the functional solution. And so what that means is we actually have experts on staff to study your marketing process, to study your sales process. We define what the client wants to do and where they want to go before we even talk about what Salesforce tool we're going to use and how are we going to configure that.
Okay. So you really act as a true consultant, understanding the problem before just diving in there. You're not a hammer running around looking for a nail. You guys are actually trying to understand, hey, what tool, what configuration of this tool is appropriate in this situation.
That is correct. So
Okay.
a really important part of what we do is we do, whether it's a very small project or a very large project, we go through a discovery process so that we know exactly what the client currently has. But more importantly, most companies, their technology really hasn't kept up with the way their staff are probably functioning, which means the staff have come up with workarounds or they've used paper clips or staples or whatever in terms of trying to make their job easier. And so the first thing we want to do is eliminate all those workarounds, define the process that the company and the employees want to actually use, and then make the software support that process. It does not work well when you make the employees try to support the way the software works.
Okay.
You get some big adoption issues that we like to avoid those.
Yeah. Okay, great. Now you mentioned that you've had to bring in a lot of different, both technically talented people and functionally talented people. Tell me about that growth. You said 2013 you guys started. So over the last almost 10 years now, how have you gone about attracting that high level, highly skilled, very specialized talent?
We use a variety of tools, which is really our heritage. A number of us in the company have 20 plus years of experience in terms of talent acquisition, specifically talent acquisition of very difficult to find resources. It started in healthcare and in 2001 with the first company that I started with my partners that we built and sold. And then VALiNTRY 360 and VALiNTRY Services became the second company that we started in 2013. And so we've learned over time that, of course, the internet is the key, but we focus on to cover the whole gambit in terms of the types of candidates that are out there. We focus on what are called passive candidates, active candidates, interested candidates, and referred candidates. And we call that our pairs strategy. And so if we've got an open position, we've not really exhausted all the opportunities to fill that position until we have focused on each of those four types of candidates.
Okay. And this is the process that you guys have actually used for your own growth. Is that right?
Absolutely. We've used our technology as well as this process to actually build our own internal Salesforce practice, which these Salesforce consultants are very difficult to get. They're in extremely high demand. And so, you have to create a culture that they like. You obviously have to find them and build a relationship with them. And what's a little bit challenging compared to what it used to be in the past is because it's a 100% remote workforce, there's a lot of things that we have to do differently to manage a group like that than obviously one that would always come to the office every day and work, from 8:30 to 5. The remote workforce is obviously, it's been one of my greatest challenges just in terms of adopting to, particularly post pandemic. And so anyway, there's been lots of change, but getting the talent is one thing, retaining it is another.
Yeah, for sure. So, and I want to dig into some of those things that you're doing, that what has changed post-pandemic with the fully remote workforce, some of those specific things that you're doing. And we'll get into that right after this. We're going to take a short break on the Clarity Advisor Show.
Is your business where you want it to be or on track to get there? Clarity Advisors helps business leaders improve communication and get your team aligned and engaged for greater success. We specialize in helping you streamline your sales and operating systems to improve efficiency and grow your profits. Call or text Ken at 616-822-2998 to have a complimentary 12-minute call to see what some clarity could do for you.
And we're back. Thanks for joining us on the Clarity Advisor Show. We're talking with Daryl Dixon about a fully remote workforce. Daryl, you mentioned there's some things that you're having to do differently now with your fully remote team. Talk about some of those things, and especially things that aren't working or didn't work that you had to pivot on. What did you try that maybe didn't work, and then what is working?
Well, we actually tried to do a hybrid within the organization, because we had a core of staff at around our headquarters here in Winter Park, Florida. We actually had them coming in initially 3 days a week. And that worked okay, but the rest of the workforce was literally all over the country, from Washington State to Maryland, Pennsylvania, North Carolina. We had consultants all over the country. And of course, we had some time zone issues. And if you've ever worked with software engineer type people, for whatever reason, in my experience, I'll just speak based on my experience, a lot of them tend to be night people. And so a lot of their best work is done in the evenings. It's not done during the normal workday. And so what we tried the hybrid, and after a while, we just said, look, we're just going to go to an all remote functionality, which everybody was relieved to do. They wanted to do that. And it's been very, very successful. I think our clients are getting excellent service. We use, tools, obviously like Teams and chat and Quip and a variety of other collaboration tools in terms of working with the team. And so it was probably the biggest transition was for me, because just of my age and my traditions. But the staff truly are very trustworthy. They do a great job. And I really think they're more productive now with this format. But we've got to be much more in tune to culture. And what I mean by that is when you are scheduled to have meetings, you need to have those meetings, because these folks work on very specific time periods in terms of talking with clients, because they spend a tremendous amount of time working with clients. So scheduling becomes very important. And the meetings become really important, because those are the connection points between the company and our staff. And so if those connection points don't happen, having had some remote employees in the past with another company, I refer to it as augmented reality. If a remote employee isn't given the facts, they make them up, or they determine what they think the facts are. And a lot of times I've discovered what the facts are and what they think the facts are quite different. And so I'm really very, very focused on making sure that we have scheduled meetings. There's actually a daily meeting with the consulting team. It's called a Scrum meeting. And they do a brief meeting in the morning talking about the projects that they'd be working on. There's actually, in our talent side of our business, VALiNTRY Services, there's also a first thing morning meeting. And that really kicks off the day. But probably what's interesting, one of the most important events we have is we have a monthly virtual social hour.
Okay.
a happy hour, we call it. And really what it amounts to is nothing more than a 30-minute organized creative game. And so, and sometimes it's been a virtual racehorse. Sometimes it's been, any number of types of games, but our group is very competitive. We're able to see everybody on the Teams call. No matter who the straightest laced person is, they'll get into it. And you see a lot of adults doing some very silly things, but it really is important for people to let their hair down and to be able to have fun together.
Right, right. Yeah, culture is so important. And I'm so glad you brought that up. That's where I wanted to go with the conversation, because especially with the remote workforce, it can be hard to create what feels like an intangible thing sometimes. But you and I, as leaders, know that it's very tangible, the results of having a strong culture versus not having a strong culture. So you've got the morning meetings as touch points. You've got the monthly social hours. What other kind of things are you doing to make sure people stay connected? And when you bring people on, how do you bring them into the culture as you onboard them?
We make it a point to try to get them here to headquarters very quickly. We do hires, on a remote basis. We do multiple interviews. It's second nature now to use Teams and to use these remote tools in terms of evaluating and assessing folks. But from an orientation standpoint, once they're on board, we like to have them come in and actually spend some time here just to help them connect a little bit more with the company. And they obviously they meet their teammates. They're working in work teams together. We do work in what's called an agile process of what are called Scrum teams. These are terms used for software development, even though we're using them for just a Salesforce configuration. But these teams work on projects, 2-week projects. They're called a 2-week sprint. And so there are routine meetings in terms of managing the projects, managing the teams, and moving the work process forward with the ongoing approval of our clients. And by using this process, employees know what they need to do, the expectations are set, and most importantly, the clients are seeing the work as it's being developed, as opposed to waiting to the end and saying, oh, wait a minute, that's not what I really wanted. So this agile process prevents that from happening, and we find it works very, very well for our employees as well as for our clients.
Okay, so the clients are getting a better outcome because they're able to see incrementally as the project goes along how it's progressing and making sure that it's exactly what they wanted, maybe not what they said, because we know a lot of times people say one thing but really mean something else, and it's hard to communicate until you actually see it. And so you're keeping them connected with these shorter sprints that gives them a window as to how it's going before it gets too far, maybe off track.
That's exactly right. And so we can course correct, mid-project with really not very much problem. And because Salesforce is so configurable and supports so many different functions, whether it's actually the marketing function or the sales function, the service function for a service company, or what we call Experience Cloud, which actually creates the interface on the web for clients to be able to self-serve and to do things directly on the website. All of those things come together in terms of making sure that we're using the right solution to support the business process, not forcing the business process into a technology solution.
Okay. Now you mentioned earlier, you made a passing comment that the biggest changes that you've had to make have been you because of your experience and your age and just where you've been as a leader. So tell me about some things that you believe with decades of experience haven't changed. What is still true about teams today, even though it's remote, even though there's different generations in the workforce? What is still true to have an effective, successful team?
The absolute most important underlying theme is to be values based. And most companies have values. We certainly have values, but we take it a step further. First of all, in our logo for the word VALiNTRY, there's an I. The dot on top of the I, if you look at it, is actually an inverted triangle. And the reason it's an inverted triangle is because our organization structure is an inverted triangle, meaning that those that are client facing and interface directly with the clients are at the top of our organization. Our middle management is in the middle of the triangle, and I am at the bottom of the triangle. And so we are big believers in servant leadership. We try to practice that and remind people of that on an ongoing basis. The other thing we do as it relates to the values is each one of our monthly management meetings actually starts out with one of the team members picking a value and talking about it. It might be associated with an article or a book, but I call it taking the values off the wall. Many companies, you can walk in and you'll be in their lobby and you can see their values. The employees know they're there, but they walk by them every day, but they're not part of the actual culture and operation of the company. So we make it a point to include a values kickoff in terms of each one of those meetings, and it's rotated. So it doesn't matter if you're a support person, if you're a lead person, if it's me. When it's my turn, I do a little values talk, and each one of us do. And there's no question that, we believe in values. And, the key thing from a leadership standpoint is you've got to walk the talk. People, you can't fool people. I come from a healthcare background. When you work with touchy-feely people for a long time, they know whether you're the real deal or not. So anyway, those values are really important. Walking the talk is important, but taking the values off the wall, I found is just paramount. A big differentiator.
So some of those things that you suggest haven't changed are the importance of the values and the importance of servant leadership. Those are kind of core principles for you that have served you well across time, and not just in the past, but also presently.
Right. But what's a little bit harder now is exhibiting that, because it's easy to walk down the hall and have a conversation with somebody and ask them how their kids are, and you heard their husband was sick. You have to be more deliberate in the communication. So that's probably what's most cumbersome for me. I have to be much more deliberate in terms of communication. It might be even a little bit less efficient because I don't have that incidental time, you could say the water cooler time, you could say, the employee kitchen time, whatever. But that small talk, I think, is really important so that everybody in the organization can relate to everybody. We also, one of the other things we believe in is just supporting families. So if you walk into our office, there's a wall of pictures of our employees with their most significant others. In some cases, it's whole families, it's a partner, it's whomever they want. But the point is, when you walk in, the front door of our office is very clear that we're a family-oriented company. We're serious about it. And one of the first things we do when an employee starts is to make sure we get the picture they want us to use as it relates to the most important people in their life.
Okay. Yeah. I was going to ask you, how do you get pictures from the remote people, and who's seeing that? So if I come to the office, it'll be up there and you're getting pictures from people when they start. Are there people still coming into the office? Do you have active people in Florida and people that still do see that wall?
There are, on the talent side of our business, it tends to be much more network oriented. And so the core recruiting team is still on premise. The other thing is we train a lot of new folks, and it's very difficult to train that particular functionality on a remote basis, because a lot of the training is on the job training, but it's hearing what their peers are saying, hearing what their boss is saying as to how they're interacting with highly technical candidates. And so that is a learning process we haven't figured out how to do remotely. But the employees seem to be happy with it. They appreciate the camaraderie and teamwork. That core Nebulous is still there, and they definitely see their pictures every day when they come in the office.
Okay, fantastic. So I notice on the back wall behind you there, and for those of you on audio, what Daryl has is a picture of a head with a DISC around it. Daryl, talk to me about that.
Yes, it's the DISC profile. We're huge believers in communication, in connecting with our customers, and we've had formal DISC training for all of our employees. And the reason we think that that's so vital is people generally fall into two hemispheres, and I'm sure you know this, but they either are fast processors or slow processors. And so it's not so much the importance of us determining the person and what they are, which is very important, but more importantly is how are we changing our pace to be able to create a quality communication and a connection with them. Particularly, we're involved in a whole variety of sales transactions. And so by understanding each of the four dominant personality types, there's obviously very, very specialized techniques in terms of how that respective individual wants to hear things, the level of detail they're interested in. And there is different as night and day in terms of, whether you have somebody that's a high I, that's, very outgoing, the life of the party, but not interested in any detail. And then you've got the C, who's very compliant, and, they can't get enough information. The more detail, the better. So the more you can kind of size up that person, whether it's a candidate or, more importantly, even is each of us on our team. We actually took the tests and we shared our profiles, everybody, mine included, with each other. And we found that, when somebody acts a certain way, it's not necessarily personal. We can step back and say, oh yeah, they're a high C, or oh yes, they're a high I. And we want a blend. That's what makes the world interesting. And we need a blend because generally the skill sets of somebody in sales is, and their DISC profile is very different than somebody that's in accounting, which is they're both critically important functions, but they do tend to have different personality types.
Right. Yeah. And salespeople aren't typically talking to other salespeople. They're actually typically talking to some buyer type, and those personality types can be very different. The behavior type of like as you mentioned, a salesperson tends to be in the I kind of quadrant, and the buyers tend to be down in the C's, and they're opposite. And if you as a salesperson are not making those adjustments to be effective in your communication, not to try to expect the listener to adapt to you, but to you to adapt your messaging and your transmission of that message to adapt to your listener, it's critical. And going through that as an organization, it's really interesting that you've done that, and then you have that common language, right? That you can refer to each other in those letters. Not that we're labeling people, but just so that it's almost like I see you, I understand you, I recognize your strengths, right?
Yep. The other thing we found really helpful is a lot of times people go through the training and it just kind of gets forgotten over time. And again, by kind of plastering up on the wall or putting, we do it on a virtual basis now, but even in some of our offices, it's up there, and you'd be shocked at how often we refer to it. We'll even take it, we'll show a candidate and say, this is my profile. How do you think that you fit in this? Explain it if they're not familiar with it, but usually they're familiar with Myers-Briggs or one of the other tools. And so it just creates for an interesting conversation, and you get to know people at a completely different level. Or if we have a problem customer and we're problem solving as a group of managers, we can look at the DISC profile and say, well, what do we think we're really dealing with here? Is it a high C, a high I, off the chart D? That requires special handling, but I think it helps us come up with a much better targeted solution that's better for the client, provides better service.
Right. Yeah. It's all about effective communication and serving well. It ties back into that servant leadership. It's hard to serve people if you don't understand what they're looking for and how they receive information best. And so it's all in service of being more effective. It's not about helping us. It's about helping us help others. So yeah, I love all that. Well, Daryl, I know you're a constant learner and an adapter of new things. What are you reading right now or consuming maybe in podcasts, listening to, or audiobooks? But what are you doing to fill yourself up so that you can turn around and pour back into your team?
I'm a big audiobooks listener. And so one of the things we do, it's a simple thing we do in the morning meeting for the talent side of the business. I use any number of sources, but we have a daily quote. Sometimes it's a quote from women in technology for the week. Sometimes it's famous people in history. Sometimes it's a particular part of the country. We take a whole variety of different things, but we also use books, classic books like How to Win Friends and Influence People, which just happens to be, there are 3 principles that we happen to be talking about this week. And so we'll do a rotation with different books in terms of, reminding people of what those are. And it's just brief. It probably lasts for about 3 minutes, but it's something I do. It's not on values as much as what's a little tool that we can use in terms of, it might be an interesting little fact, or it might be something that we can apply, but we try to mix it up and make it interesting. But in terms of books, I'm a big history person. The most recent book, I also am a big fan of Malcolm Gladwell. He's got an excellent book out called The Bomber Mafia right now. I finished that just not too long ago. But the book that I'm into right now is called The Snowball Effect. And I like biographies, and it happens to be the biography of Warren Buffett, which I find very fascinating.
Okay, excellent. Well, we'll put those in the show notes. Daryl, if somebody wanted to reach out to you to connect and maybe had some Salesforce questions, looking for some help on integrating Salesforce into their organization, what would be a good way to reach out and connect with you?
They can certainly find me on LinkedIn, just with my name, DaryLDixon. They can come to the website at VALiNTRY360.com, or my email is ddixon@valintry.com, and that's VALINTRY, excuse me. And remember, the Y has the inverted triangle.
All right. Excellent. Well, we'll put those connection points in the show notes as well, so that people can find you and reach out and connect. So that's great. Thank you so much for being here. It's been really interesting to hear all the stuff that you've got going on and hear some of those leadership principles that never change. I'm aligned with you on those. I think that culture and servant leadership are critically important. And I love hearing about specifically how you guys are doing that at VALiNTRY. So thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. And that brings us to the end of another Clarity Advisors show. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Clarity Advisors show. Clarity Advisors is a speaking, training, and consulting firm specializing in helping you simplify your sales and operating systems to improve efficiency and grow your profits. Connect with Clarity Advisors today to learn more about how they can help you improve communication and get your team aligned and engaged for greater success.